What's going on, you guys? It's your boy Kaiza-Sama, and we are back with another episode review for Dragon Ball Daima. So, if you guys are new here, drop that like and sub for your boy. Make sure you turn on those post notifications so you know whenever I drop a new video. Now, without further ado, let's just hop straight into it. Now, we are picking up right where we left off from episode 10. With this being episode 11, we are basically seeing Tamagami 1 and Majin Cou finally staring face to face. Dr. Arinsu, she's waiting for, the final outcome and whatnot. So with this being said, we don't really see where Tamagami 1 actually is. We just see, kind of this, arena-esque type, battle arena type setting. And I'm guessing it's kind of like the town hall area. It's just a wild guess, but we see the two are facing off. We see that Majin Cou, he's, very confident in himself. But once we see that, he fires off a couple attacks at Tamagami number 1, and we see Tamagami, he basically deflects these attacks, or he shreds them, with ease. And it kind of throws Majin Cou off a little bit because, like I said, I'm guessing, he came into this fight assuming that he would just win so easily, but that is not going to be the case. Now, with Tamagami number 1, one thing is for sure, he is very powerful, because if Majin Cou is on the level of the Tamagamis, if anything, I would say he's like on the level of Tamagami number 3, more than likely. Even then, I would probably say Tamagami number 3 might even whoop Majin Cou. Because once we see Majin Cou really fight, we see that he's really more so of this comedic relief, I'm guessing, for, the villain's sake of the show. We aren't seeing, the top dog, villain right now, because I feel like even Goma, he's really not the final villain that, everybody's waiting for. I definitely think it's going to be something in the shadows, something in the skies, and the Majin characters, these kind of, how do I say it? These generic Majin characters, Majin Cou and Majin Du, we still have not seen Majin Du. He's actually going to be revealed in the future episodes. I have a good feeling that once he gets revealed, we'll see probably some tag team fights with Cou and Du going up against Vegeta and Goku. More than likely, we probably will be seeing something like that unfold. But within this fight, we do just see some of the basic features of Majin Cou. So we see that he has some similar abilities to Majin Buu. And when I say Majin Buu, I'm really relating more so to the fat, version of Majin Buu, the good version, not Kid Buu. But the whole appearance for him, he does have that Kid Buu appearance, but he has the fat Majin Buu, like demeanor to him. So, he appears as if he's going to be taken serious, but like I said, once you see the fight actually unfold, he does, throw hands a little bit here and there. He, throws this energy blast at Tamagami 1. But like I said, Tamagami number 1, he basically slices it like it's nothing. And after Majin Cou sees this, he's kind of like shocked by this, but, it's something that we'll come to see is not going to be like a huge shock. Now, we do pan over to the next scene where we actually see Goku and the gang. They have finally made it to Warp-Sama. And once they finally got here, we see that Supreme Kai, he turns Goku's ears to the pointy ears again. Just, recalling back to what I think it was episode 2 or 3, when he stretched out his ears to make him look like he's from the demon realm. So he does that once again to make this process a whole lot easier for them to pass through. So once they do, Pansy, she just tells Warp-Sama we're family from, Goma's army or whatever. So Warp-Sama trusts them. He lets them through. So we see that they want to go through Demon World 2, that entrance. But Supreme Kai brings up, why don't they just go to Demon World 1 since they have the actual ship from, Goma's army. Um, but Goku brings up the simple fact that they still need to gather the second, Dragon Ball from Demon World 2. So, Glorio, he kind of backs that up. And because we see that Glorio, he has his plan with Dr. Orensu, and she's trying to get the Dragon Ball. So, of course, Glorio, he's going to be on this side of like the POV and like, oh yeah, we got to get the Dragon Ball, like Goku said. But, in the shadows, in the skies, we know Glorio has his own plans, but they don't know that as of yet. So they do make that final decision to go through the second demon world. And once we see them go through, we finally pan over to Vegeta, Hybius, Piccolo, and Bulma. They're flying over, and I'm assuming they're about to get into the second demon world too. Or they could already have been in it. They possibly could have made it right into the second demon world just after they did. And once we pan back over, let me see. Oh yeah, Panda does say something about her skin being youthful and whatnot. And of course that relates to the Dragon Balls and, that Easter egg of how the last two Dragon Ball movies, we see that she's used the Dragon Balls to kind of, finesse her aging with, wishing for these youthful looks. I can't even talk. She's wishing for the butt lift and better skin and all this stuff. So we do end up seeing that with Bulma once again. And just a little, Easter egg for that. And Hybius, he gets a little bold because he says he could make Bulma his girlfriend. And we see Vegeta get pretty hot about that. And, it just comes this whole, comedic scene between them. But we do pan back to seeing how Majin Cou and Tamagami number 1 are back fighting. And once we see more of their fights, once we see more of their fighting scenes, we see that Majin Cou does a very memorable move, very similar to Pycon, this tornado-esque move. And we see that the tornado is basically made of the same aura, the same color aura that he is. So it's very similar to how Majin Buu, you would see his ki blasts were made up these pink energy blasts. Well, with Majin Cou, we see that they're made up of these green energy blasts. So he uses this tornado-like move to attack Tamagami number 1, but he easily dodges out of the way and he grabs Majin Cou by the pants, and Tamagami number 1 throws this man into the air like it's nothing. And we see that Majin Cou, he gets pretty frustrated by this, and for the sake of the rest of the fight, he basically, does these wonky, goofy moves. And this further confirms that he's really not supposed to be taken as like the final, Trump, boss that we're eventually going to see. Like I was just saying earlier, we just see more of that comedic personality of Majin Cou. And we see that he approaches Tamagami number 1 with a mouth blast at like point blank range. And once we finally pan back to it, we see that this attack really didn't even affect Tamagami number 1. We see that it hardly even scratched him. And like I was saying earlier, I feel like Tamagami number 1 is very powerful because of this scene. It kind of proves to us, what we kind of speculated about him. And the whole fact that he is taking this fight with Majin Cou so lightly, it could just be proving how powerful he is, but also be telling us how weak Majin Cou is. So you can take that as you will. But eventually Tamagami number 1, he throws him around a couple more times. He uses kind of like this flash step move that looks very reminiscent of instant transmission. And he appears around Majin Cou, just very fast, in these fast-paced movements. And Majin Cou eventually gives up the battle against Tamagami number 1, and he, just throws in the towel. He runs back to Dr. Orensu, and he actually has the goal to tell her, he's strong, but I can't beat him. He's too strong. So Dr. Orensu is just completely confused by this whole farce. And as they're flying away, like I was just saying, he admits that Tamagami number one is too strong, but he's strong too, but his feeds can be used in other things. And Dr. Arinsu says that he's fired and all this good stuff. So, like I said, it was pretty much turning out to be like a comedic scene with Majin Cou not really being that, that boss that, can be built up in Toriyama's work. But like I said, it kind of gives some people that relief to know that, okay, he's not the final boss. So, there's a lot more for us to look forward to. Now we get back to the scene where after Goku and the gang arrive into the second demon world, they notice that it looks very reminiscent of Planet Namek, and they notice that the air is a little bit thinner so they can fly a lot faster, which means they're going to get to Tamagami number 2 a lot faster. So as they do mention this, Supreme Kai does bring up something about Krakens. They're basically these demonic giant, squid Kraken creatures that reside in the waters of Demon World 2. Glorio confirms and he says, yes, there's still dozens of them here. And with that, they know, or they basically tell, or Supreme Kai just basically says that so they can fly above the water, for a certain distance so they don't get attacked by that. But in the midst of speaking on it, we have Goma's men show up out of nowhere, and we see how Goma's men, they basically show up, and we see this kind of like Star Wars type scene where with Akira being, a fan of Star Wars, we now see, a few different scenes through Dragon Ball Daima, throughout the season so far. We've seen some bar scenes, we've seen some fight scenes here and there, but this was definitely a Star Wars type scene where we see the ships firing at the ship that Glorio is piloting, and we see that Glorio, he can, he has some real good piloting skills because he can maneuver around these ships, and we see he gets behind them and he starts firing at the ships, but it seems that there's just too many of them for him to take on. So we see how Goku, he actually tells Glorio to just open the back hatch, and he's going to go out there and take care of some of these ships. So as he opens it up, Goku, he flies out, starts whooping ass, taking all these ships out, jumping from ship to ship, taking them out with his red pole. He doesn't really need to, go Super Saiyan or anything like that. He can already fly. So it's really much just like light work for Goku to take out these ships. But once we see that he gets back to the ship, we see that the Kraken finally reveals itself, and we see that this thing is pretty huge, but it's pretty wonky looking as well. I thought they could have made it look at least a little bit more, I don't know, like I was just expecting at least a little bit more of like a realist look for like, like a Kraken creature. But we really just get like this wonky Majin, giant head creature of like a Kraken creature. It was pretty funny, dude. I was like, yo, is this what they're really calling a Kraken? But, we got to remember that we are kind of like, I won't say in the kid zone, but we're kind of like in that zone where, some of these designs that we would have thought were kiddie, a few years ago, we're seeing them now. And pretty much it's just a part of, this design and a part of this project. So it is what it is, but we definitely get to see some wonky creatures here and there. The Kraken is definitely a part of that. And once we see the Kraken show up, he actually attacks the ship, and he forces for Goku and the gang to have to depart the ship. But Pansy, she flies back into the ship to get the Dragon Ball. And we see that she's kind of having a hard time getting out. Goku flies in, he saves her, and the ship gets, devoured by the Kraken. So they've lost all of their luggage and whatnot. But Pansy managed to save the Dragon Ball, so that was, the main focus. That was the good news. So once they finally, survive that encounter, they fly over to the old planet Namek that the Namekians used to actually live on down in the demon world. So once they fly over there, Goku, he says that he'll go get Vegeta and Hymus because he can sense them nearby. So once we get Goku retrieving the rest of the gang and bringing them to the planet, we see more lore is being revealed as for the planet looking a lot like, with these Namekians and how they can actually farm their trees and use their technology on different planets. We basically find out that even though Frieza destroyed planet Namek way back in Dragon Ball Z, it is somewhat easy if, Namekians have the technology and manpower to create another planet, into another planet Namek, basically. So that's basically what we end up finding out about that whole lore with Piccolo. And Goku, he finally ends up finding their ship. And once he finds the ship and he flies on, he tells Hymus to fly up so they can avoid the Kraken. And he basically tells Vegeta and Piccolo that there's monsters down there in the water. And once the Kraken jumps up, he basically surprises Vegeta and, they dodge out of the way from the Kraken. And Goku basically states to Vegeta that they aren't strong enough to beat the Kraken. So with this line, it kind of made some questions arise with some people in asking, is the Kraken more powerful than Tagami number 3? I mean, when you look at something like this, it's kind of like one of those situations where, Tamagami number 3 is like a tiger, and then the Kraken is like literally like a blue whale or something. You know what I'm saying? Like, to me, it would seem almost as if, the size really would matter in a fight like this, because the Kraken is just huge, and then it has multiple arms. Just the force of it and the speed of it, we just don't know. And I guess that can be depicted because Goku defeated Tamagami number 3. So if Goku and Vegeta aren't strong enough to beat the Kraken, then I see where people are getting that assumption from. But once they land and we finally get the whole crew together again, we do end up with Supreme Kai. He basically explains to Bulma, she ends up asking Supreme Kai about his real name, and he states that, he does have a real name, and he's one of the ones that escaped from the demon realm. But there's a long story to tell to it, and as we get into it, please pay attention, because once we get into this lore, it is going to kind of connect a lot of dots, but then at the same time, it's still going to make a lot of questions arise. So please pay attention as we get into this. So West Supreme Kai, he basically explains to all of us in this scene that at some time there was a good Supreme Demon King, and this good Supreme Demon King resided as the king over the demon realm. And this demon realm, as we know now, was here before the 18 universes, right? So before then, good Supreme Demon King, he asked this super powerful Majin Rymus being, he asked this being to create the universes. So from here on out, we now know that there is a god of, I was about to say god of destruction, a god of creation that matches the god of destruction, Zeno. This is that being, Rymus. Rymus is the being of creation. He is also known as the highest, deity. He's basically, for the hierarchy of Dragon Ball now, we now know that Rymus is the top dog. He's like the one who brought about the universes. Now, with that being said, that kind of raises questions, with a lot of people basically asking, So what does that mean with Zeno and the Grand Priest as far as their power levels and, where they reside on the tree of power, of hierarchy and whatnot? So I feel like a lot more of that is going to be revealed with further episodes. But, excuse me, this was really giving us that good deep dive into a good chunk of lore that we just didn't know altogether. You know what I mean? So as we get into it and we hear more about Rymus creating these universes, we would then go on to find out that Majin beings actually, moved through these different universes and, we're actually populating these universes. And, once these Majins moved out to these different universes, that's when Rymus would actually appoint the Glens to actually watch over these universes as, the Supreme Kais. Now, with these various universes being created and Majins being the central I guess like the base species for like a lot of the beings out there in these different universes, Boma, it kind of arises to her to ask, does that mean every being in the universe is a descendant of the Majin? And Kai clears it up and basically tells her that no, that is not exactly true, because there was the time frame, of course, that after Majin had already populated these universes and whatnot. If you were born after that time frame of, when these events happened, then that basically explains the whole, I guess, like time gap as far as, when beings were being created and born and destroyed and whatnot. That was that in between time where, as far as Earthlings and Saiyans were depicted as their own species. So that debunks the whole, I don't know who was walking around saying Saiyans are demons, but that kind of debunks that whole theory right there, that Saiyans are not demons. Saiyans are their own species as just as far as like Earthlings are, so that kind of just puts that nail in the coffin right there. And as we see that, Earthlings or Saiyans are their own beings, they were created after this time frame, like I was just saying, there came a time when many Glen ancestors had moved to a planet near Rymus. Now, this part kind of confused me because I feel like either Kai worded it wrong or there was two different times when Glens were being appointed as Supreme Kais, because he states just now that when Rymus created these universes, he appointed Supreme Kais, or he appointed these Glens as Supreme Kais to watch over these universes, right? But then when Boma, she asks this question, and then we get into Supreme Kai explaining about his ancestors moving to the planet near Rymus, he then goes on to explain how Abora, the predecessor of Dubora, was actually the evil force that the Glens were revolting against. And as far as Warp-Sama, it was basically the transition, the, magic transit between all realms, even the living realm, to, all the other universes. So with that being said, Abora saw the threat that could possibly and potentially come from these outside universes. He saw that as a big problem. So that's when he limited the Warp-Samas. He created the passwords, more than likely, to where now, to even get through Warp-Sama, you need a password, a PIN number, I guess. And with that, Abora being the force that kind of made the Glens revolt against him, that basically became that time frame when the remaining Glens, that basically means Kai, he was a part of those remaining Glens that revolted against Abora's cruel ways, and they escaped to the outside universe. I'm guessing that's when he got to that planet that was near Rymus, and then he was then appointed as a Supreme Kai. So that is basically the whole lore breakdown. And with that being the case, Goku goes into telling Bulma, "Did you know that glens are born from trees?" And Bulma, she, says, "Really? I didn't know that." And Kai basically just goes on to simply explain, yes. But with that, we basically find out that, all the trees died. And with that being the reason, no reason to stay there, that was like the other side of the demon world too, where the glens live. So being that the trees are all dead, there's basically like no reason for any glen to even be over there. So all the glens have basically moved out. And it is possible for these glen trees to be planted again. Whether or not that will actually happen, we don't really know. But Bulma puts, two and two together, and she says glens are eventually going to die out. She questions him about that, and he basically confirms, yes, that is true. So with that all being said, we basically find out that Rymus is the sole creator of the universes, and Zeno-Sama is the sole destroyer of these universes. So, with all that being said, we have now taken in a lot of lore. For next episode, we will be seeing Vegeta go up against Tamagami number 2, because once we take off from the end of this episode, we see the gang, they all pile up in the spaceship that Hymus has. And once they take off, Neva, he actually shows up on the old Namek planet, and it kind of just arises some questions as to why he's still there. And it kind of makes people wonder, why did he go back there? If, I wonder if Goma dropped him back off there or what. We really are trying to figure out why he's there particularly. But next episode, we will definitely be seeing Vegeta go up against Tamagami number 2. I know Goku's going to be a little salty because Goku wants to fight all the Tamagamis. He wants to do all the fights, but Vegeta, he got to get his shine too. Vegeta got to get his little spotlight time too. So in the next episode, we will be seeing that fight undergo. Whether or not we will see the whole fight in one episode, I'm not too sure. But, we just got to stay tuned. So let me know your theories down below. Let me know what you thought about this episode, about Majin Cou, about the universe, lore, and all that good stuff. But without further ado, I will see you guys in the next episode review video. Make sure you turn on those post notifications so you know when I drop a new video. And with that being said, you guys take care, be safe, be easy, peace.